The 4th annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament is coming, March 17th through 23rd. Law enforcement basketball teams from throughout the Caribbean will compete as we display the Caribbean spirit of camaraderie. Dominica, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, Trinidad and Tobago, all competing for the prestigious championship trophy. But they have to go through the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and Her Majesty's prisons before they can meet defending champions, the Royal Bahamas Police Force. There will also be a clash of the East versus West Senior Boys High School Championship, along with the annual slam dunk and three-point competition. The winner will receive a scholarship prize. That's right, the 4th annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament, March 17th through 23rd. You don't want to miss this one.
Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, the Prime Minister expands on the government's exploratory oil drilling decision. The Free National Movement responds. The union that represents BEC line staff enraged by the newly implemented shift system, and 7 Colombians charged with conspiracy to import cocaine. We've got those stories and so much more coming up. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12. With the referendum on oil drilling pushed back to 2015 and exploratory drilling expected to start by next year, Prime Minister Perry Christie says the government plans to fully inform the public before any poll is taken. Outside the House of Assembly this afternoon, the Prime Minister elaborated on the government's position. Our Jasmine Bonamy has their story.
A day after the Ministry of Environment released a statement on the possibility of oil drilling in the Bahamas, Prime Minister Perry Christie has commented on the matter, saying it only makes sense to explore that possibility since the Cuban government is already doing the same. In the press statement that was issued yesterday, it was revealed that the government will allow exploratory drilling to determine if the country has commercially viable oil reserves before it holds a referendum on the issue. It also explained that the exploration data needed to verify if the country has enough petroleum reserves to justify drilling would not be available until the end of 2014 or early 2015. As a result, the government is not expected to hold an oil drilling referendum before the second half of 2015, depending on the outcome of the exploration. Christie said even if oil is found, the decision to drill further will depend solely on the Bahamian people.
If God has given the Bahamas oil in the quantities some people say exist, it would be an incredible bounty for our country. But we took a position that if there is going to be the exploitation of oil in the Bahamas, it has to be done with the consent of the Bahamian people. That we are committed to enabling companies who are licensed to conduct their research to a conclusion that will enable them to say there is oil in commercial quantities. And that is the position that we have.
The Bahamas Petroleum Company was granted 5 oil exploration licenses in April 2007. Those licenses were renewed by the current administration last year after being rejected by the Ingram administration months earlier. To date, BPC has invested $50 million in the country, most of that spent on 3D seismic testing, and estimates it would spend another $120 million on exploratory drilling. Hours after the release of the statement, BPC CEO Simon Porter welcomed the news as an opportunity to properly plan for exploration drilling, which he said is at least a year away. According to Christie, Russian interests have begun drilling for oil in Cuban waters, not far south of the Bahamas, and because of this, the government must quicken its decision on oil drilling and ensure the necessary environmental laws and regulations are in place.
The difficulty with the Bahamas' position is that we are satisfied that we have to put a new regime in place that governs it. The Cubans have done it. Other countries have done it, and as far as I'm aware, Minister Dorset was asked by the Cubans as to when the Bahamas would put in place the regime that would govern oil production and exploration. And he was saying that that is something that he's in the process of doing. I am told that the Cuban wells might be an indication, but because of our structures are different to theirs, they believe that the structures in the Bahamas are structures that contain oil, whether light crude or heavy crude, but contain oil in commercial quantities. And so that will only happen, and when the people will obviously be consulted as to whether or not we should move ahead.
Meantime, the government has also pledged that if significant oil reserves are found, the government would launch an extensive public information program on the implications of oil drilling. Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.
Well, the Free National Movement is also weighing in on the government's most recent statement on oil drilling. Leader of the opposition, Dr. Hubert Minnis, said the party doesn't support exploratory oil drilling as there are still no environmental laws to regulate it. Without proper protections in place, Minnis insists oil drilling in any form is still a dangerous venture. And based on the government's new position, the F&M leader accused the Christie administration of flip-flopping on the issue.
It is flip-flopping, because you must have regulations in place, because if you have an exploratory well, one can assume that if you're exploring and you detect anything, your regulations not in place, you're going to proceed. And therefore you can endanger the whole livelihood of the tourist industry, the marine resources, Spanish well, fishermen, etc. It's a very, very dangerous road to tread without having proper regulations in place. We've seen what happened in the Gulf. And if for something like that to happen in the Bahamas, where 80% of our employment depends on tourism, whether direct or indirect, that can be a disaster for this nation.
Well, Minnis also said the PLP has yet to live up to its promise to provide information about oil drilling, and said he doubts that will happen before the impending oil drilling referendum, which is about 2 years away. Minnis added that the Ingram administration closed the books on the near-term possibility of oil drilling after the 2010 BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, in news from the House of Assembly, local authorities are gaining more insight into a recent influx of illegal migrants to the Bahamas during the first few months of the year. During his contribution to the mid-year budget debate today, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell said a meeting was recently convened with the American government on this matter, and there were also consultations with the government of Haiti. Mitchell said in some cases many migrants are being lied to about amnesty being offered in the United States. The Foreign Affairs and Immigration Minister added that the influx of illegal immigrants shows no sign of slowing down, and during the first 2 months of this year, 600 migrants have already been repatriated.
To carry out all of these propositions, the Department of Immigration has a staff of immigration officers of 231 people who must administer these rules, laws, and policies over 26 or so inhabited islands that stretch over 400 miles of territory from north to south. The question then is, are Bahamians willing to pay for an immigration department? In this fiscal year, we budgeted approximately $1 million for repatriation. This has been reduced by some 10% due to the budget exigencies, and the amount is now, the total amount for the fiscal year is $900,000. So far this year, or at the point of the writing of this, we had used up $736,420.98 of that allocation, with a balance left for the annual allocation of $143,479,02.
Well, with so much being spent to tackle illegal immigration, Mitchell said the government is looking to tackle things in a new way. The minister said in recent weeks there's been extensive dialogue between Bahamian and American officials on intelligence and information sharing. It was agreed that there would be more thorough interviews with migrants before they're sent back to Haiti. The government is also working with the United Nations International Organization for Migration and the U.S. government to work on manpower and equipment and intelligence to spot those setting out to sea from Haiti to stop them from coming into the Bahamas illegally. Well, after months of pushing for the implementation of a shift system for BEC workers, the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union said BEC's chairman Leslie Miller is moving forward despite the fact that an agreement has yet to be reached with union members. Today, scores of employees gathered in BEC's parking lot to voice their concerns. Celeste Nixon has more.
President of the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union, Stefano Green, said the shift system is being rushed without proper consultations and, more importantly, is in direct violation of the current industrial agreement.
Yeah, it's a very rushed process. Our contract speaks about a process of consultation, information, a process of information gathering, a process of sitting down to the table, discussing to make sure that it's in the best interest of all parties involved. That process has not been done. And so, yes, he's rushing into it. Yes, he's going beyond his authority, beyond what the contract says, and he does not have the right and the authority to do this.
According to Green, the union and BEC management agreed to discuss all clauses in the industrial agreement, including those regarding flexi time and rostering. Green said, however, the union has yet to agree on the corporation's proposals. Miller previously said the system would save the corporation millions of dollars in excess overtime.
On Thursday, March 7, 2013, the union was advised that Mr. Miller met with managers at BEC and instructed them to implement rostering throughout the corporation, knowing that the union and BEC have not come to an agreement on rostering within the corporation, and knowing that we are still at the negotiation table discussing BEC's proposed rostering system. We have been reliably informed that staff and customer service have been rostered effective this morning, and that goes totally against our industrial agreement.
Green said the BEWU will once again seek to meet with Prime Minister Perry Christie, and if the matter can't be resolved, the union is prepared to take additional action. National Congress of Trade Unions President Jennifer Isaac Dotson, throwing her support behind the BEWU, said unions have made a substantial contribution to the country's development and should continue to play an important role in these discussions.
It is so sad to see that happening in our country for the many things that we fought for to get where we are today. It almost seems that we're right back to 1958. We're right back to what was happening in our country that our forefathers had to fight for, that Sir Randall those had to fight for. I think we see the same things that were done years and years ago being done differently, but with the same outcome, the same conquer and divide methods, those kinds of things being done. It needs to stop.
Miller could not be reached to confirm whether a roster rotation has been implemented.
Though the shift system currently affects the customer service department, the union fears it will soon be forced upon the technical line staff, which Green says the union will not stand for. Reporting for MB12, I'm Celeste Nixon.